The forest swallowed the last of the sun, leaving only whispers of light through the pines. Ezra Coleman's heart thumped louder than the crunch of leaves under his boots, louder than the rush of the nearby river. He wasn't ready for what this night might unravel. Not with Javier Morales, his best friend, walking just a step ahead, oblivious to the storm brewing in Ezra's chest. They'd known each other since freshman year at the University of Oregon, two misfits bonding over late-night study sessions and a shared love for old-school hip-hop. Ezra, 25, was a graphic designer with a quick laugh and a guarded heart, his dark skin catching the glow of the campfire they were setting up now. Javier, also 25, was a budding environmental scientist, his warm brown eyes always scanning the world like it held secrets he was meant to uncover. They'd hiked together before, but this trip to the Willamette National Forest was different. It was just the two of them, no group, no distractions, just a single tent and a weekend to escape the noise of Eugene. Ezra tossed another log onto the fire, sparks snapping into the cool September air. "You sure you're not gonna freeze out here, Javi?" he teased, trying to keep his voice steady. "You're already shivering like it's January." Javier laughed, his breath visible in the twilight. "Man, I'm tougher than I look. Besides, you're the one who picked this spot, middle of nowhere, no cell service. What's the plan if a bear shows up?" "Run faster than you," Ezra shot back, grinning. But his eyes lingered too long on Javier's profile. The sharp jawline, the way his curls caught the firelight. He looked away, cursing himself. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not now, not ever. They'd planned this trip to celebrate Javier's acceptance into a prestigious grad program in Colorado. In 2 months, he'd be gone, leaving Ezra behind in Oregon. The thought twisted something deep inside Ezra, a mix of pride and dread. He'd spent years burying his feelings, convincing himself their friendship was enough. But tonight, under the vast, unjudging sky, those feelings clawed their way to the surface. "Yo, you good?" Javier asked, tossing a stick into the fire. His voice was soft, probing. He'd always had a knack for reading Ezra's silences. "Yeah, just thinking about you leaving," Ezra said, half-truthful. He poked at the fire, avoiding Javier's gaze. "It's gonna be weird without you around." Javier's smile faltered. "I know, but we'll stay tight, right? Video calls, visits, you can't get rid of me that easy." Ezra nodded, but the words felt hollow. He wanted more than friendship, more than late-night texts and occasional visits. He wanted Javier in a way that terrified him, not just because of the risk to their bond, but because Ezra had never said those words aloud to anyone. Not to his conservative family back in Atlanta, not to the guys he'd casually dated in college. Admitting he was gay had been a battle. Admitting he was in love with his best friend felt like a war. The fire crackled as they set up the tent, a small 2-person dome that suddenly felt too intimate. Javier crawled inside first, unrolling his sleeping bag with a dramatic flourish. "Check it out, Easy. We're basically pioneers now. Lewis and Clark, but with better snacks." Ezra chuckled, but his hands shook as he zipped up the tent flap. The space was tight, their sleeping bags inches apart. Outside, the forest hummed with life. Crickets, distant owls, the river's steady rush. Inside, it was just them, the air heavy with unspoken words. They talked for hours, sprawled out under the glow of a lantern. Javier shared his dreams of studying climate change in the Rockies, his voice alive with passion. Ezra listened, captivated, but his mind kept drifting to the inches between them. Every laugh, every brush of Javier's arm against his, felt like a spark that could ignite or destroy. "You ever think about what's next for you?" Javier asked, turning onto his side to face Ezra. The lantern cast shadows across his face, making his eyes seem deeper, more searching, Like not just work, but life. Who you want to share it with? Ezra's throat tightened. The question hung in the air, a live wire. He could lie, deflect like he always did, or he could take the leap. I think about it, he said slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. More than I should. Javier's brow furrowed, but he didn't push. Instead, he reached out, his hand resting lightly on Ezra's arm. Whoever it is, they'd be lucky to have you, man. The touch burned. Ezra's heart pounded so hard he was sure Javier could hear it. He wanted to pull away to protect himself, but he couldn't move. The forest, the tent, the world outside. It all faded. There was only Javier, his hand warm and steady, his eyes locked on Ezra's. Javi, Ezra started, his voice cracking. He didn't know how to say it, didn't know if he could. But the weight of years of secrets pressed against his chest. What if the person I want is already here? The air stilled. Javier's hand froze, his eyes widening. For a moment, neither of them breathed. Then, slowly, Javier's lips curved into a smile. Not his usual playful grin, but something softer, more vulnerable. Easy, he said, his voice low. Are you saying what I think you're saying? Ezra's pulse roared in his ears. He nodded, unable to speak, his heart laid bare. This was it, the moment that could change everything or break it apart. Javier's smile held, but his eyes flickered with something Ezra couldn't read. Surprise? Maybe? Or fear? The tent felt smaller now, the air thick with the weight of Ezra's confession. He wanted to bolt, to tear through the forest and pretend he'd never spoken. But Javier's hand was still on his arm, grounding him. Say it again, Javier whispered, his voice steady but laced with urgency. I need to hear it, Easy. Ezra swallowed, his mouth dry. I'm in love with you, he said, the words spilling out like a dam breaking. I've been in love with you for years, Javi, and I know this might screw everything up, but I couldn't keep it in anymore. Javier didn't pull away. Instead, he shifted closer, his knee brushing Ezra's in the cramped space. Why didn't you tell me sooner? He asked, not accusing but curious, almost hurt. Ezra laughed, a bitter edge to it. Because I was scared. Scared you'd hate me. Scared I'd lose you. You're my best friend, man. I didn't want to ruin that. Javier's hand moved to Ezra's wrist, his thumb tracing a slow circle. You think I'd hate you for being honest? For being you? He shook his head, his curls catching the lantern's glow. Easy, I've known you were gay since sophomore year. You never hid it well. Ezra's eyes widened. You knew. Dude. You stared at that barista at the coffee shop like he was a damn sunset, Javier said, grinning. I figured it out, and I didn't care. You're still you. The relief hit Ezra like a wave, but it was short-lived. Knowing Javier was okay with his sexuality wasn't the same as knowing he felt the same way. But that's not the same as this, Ezra said, gesturing vaguely between them. I don't even know if you're into guys. Javier finished, his voice soft but direct. He leaned back slightly, his expression unreadable. I've never put a label on it. I dated girls in high school, a guy once in college. Didn't work out, but not because of that. I never thought about us like that. Not until now. Ezra's heart stuttered. Now? Javier's gaze dropped to the sleeping bag, then back to Ezra. Yeah, now. Hearing you say it, it's like something clicked. Like I've been ignoring something right in front of me. The words hung between them, fragile and electric. Ezra wanted to believe them, but doubt gnawed at him. Was Javier just caught up in the moment? Would he wake up tomorrow and regret this? Ezra had seen it before. Friends who blurred lines in the heat of the night, only to retreat come morning. Javi, don't say that unless you mean it, Ezra said, his voice raw. I can't do this if it's just a fleeting thing for you. Javier's eyes softened, and he reached out, cupping Ezra's face with both hands. I'm not messing with you, Easy. I don't know what this means yet, but I know I don't want to lose you either. And I know I've never felt closer to anyone than I do right now. Before Ezra could respond, Javier leaned in, his lips brushing Ezra's in a kiss that was tentative at first, then deeper, more certain. It was like the forest itself held its breath. The river, the crickets, the wind, all silenced by the weight of that moment. Ezra's hands found Javier's shoulders, pulling him closer, years of longing pouring into that single, desperate kiss. When they pulled apart, both were breathless, their foreheads resting together. Okay, Javier murmured, a shaky laugh escaping him. That was intense. Ezra grinned, his heart still racing. Yeah, no kidding. They lay back, side by side, the lantern casting soft shadows. The conversation shifted to lighter things. Memories of college pranks, plans for the hike tomorrow. But the air was different now, charged with possibility. As they drifted towards sleep, Javier's hand found Ezra's, their fingers intertwining in the dark. The next morning, the forest was alive with mist and birdsong. Ezra woke first, Javier's arms slung across his chest, their sleeping bags tangled. For a moment he panicked. What if Javier regretted it? But when Javier stirred, his sleepy smile was enough to quiet the fear. Morning, Javier mumbled, his voice rough. You snore, by the way. Liar. Ezra shot back, but he was grinning. They packed up the tent, the ease between them laced with something new, something fragile but real. The hike took them deeper into the forest, along trails lined with ferns and moss-covered rocks. They talked about everything and nothing, Javier's grad school plans, Ezra's latest design projects, the way the light filtered through the canopy. But every glance, every brush of their hands, carried weight. Ezra felt like he was walking on air, but the question lingered, what now? By midday, they reached a clearing with a view of the Cascades, jagged peaks cutting into the sky. Javier dropped his pack and turned to Ezra, his expression serious. We need to talk about this, Easy. About us. Ezra's stomach twisted, but he nodded. Yeah, we do. The clearing was a cathedral of green, the mountains looming like silent witnesses. Ezra's heart pounded as he faced Javier, the weight of last night's kiss still lingering. He wanted to hold on to the hope, but fear crept in. What if this was where it unraveled? Javier sat on a fallen log, patting the space beside him. Come here, Easy. Let's figure this out. Ezra joined him, the rough bark grounding him. Okay, he said, his voice steadier than he felt. What's this mean for you? Because I meant what I said last night. This isn't just a fling for me. Javier's eyes traced the horizon, his jaw tight. I know, and I meant it too. I've never felt like this with anyone. But he hesitated, running a hand through his curls. I'm leaving for Colorado in 2 months, and I don't know what that means for us. The words hit like a punch. Ezra had known this was coming, but hearing it aloud made it real. So what, we just pretend this didn't happen? He asked, his voice sharp. Go back to being just friends? No, Javier said quickly, turning to face him. That's not what I want. But I don't want to hurt you either. Long distance is hard, Easy. And I'm not even sure what I am. Bi, queer, something else. I'm still figuring it out. Ezra's chest ached, but he nodded. I get it. It's messy. But I'd rather deal with the mess than lose you altogether. Javier's hand found his, squeezing gently. Me too. Let's just take it one step at a time. Okay? We've got this weekend. Let's not overthink it yet. Ezra wanted to argue, to demand certainty, but Javier's touch softened the edges of his fear. They spent the afternoon exploring the trails, their laughter echoing through the forest. But the unspoken question lingered. Could they build something real before Javier left? That night, back at the campsite, they cooked dinner over the fire, the tension from earlier easing into something warmer. Javier told stories of his childhood in New Mexico, his voice animated as he described his abuela's tamales. Ezra shared memories of Atlanta, of sneaking out to jazz clubs with his older brother. The firelight danced across their faces, and for a moment, the future didn't matter. As they crawled into the tent, Javier pulled Ezra close, their kisses slower this time, more deliberate. It wasn't just passion, it was trust, a promise to try despite the odds. They fell asleep tangled together, the forest humming around them. The next day, reality crept back in. On the hike out, Javier got a text. Cell service had returned, and with it, a reminder of his upcoming move. His advisor in Colorado wanted to meet next week, a step toward his new life. Ezra saw the shift in Javier's eyes, the way his smile tightened. "You're already thinking about Boulder, aren't you?" Ezra said, trying to keep his tone light as they packed up the car. Javier sighed, leaning against the trunk. "Yeah, it's not just the move, Easy. It's everything. My family doesn't even know I've dated guys. I don't know how to tell them. And you deserve someone who's got it all figured out." Ezra's heart sank, but he stepped closer, his voice firm. "I don't need you to have it all figured out. I just need you to be honest with me. Can you do that?" Javier nodded, his eyes bright with emotion. "I'll try, I promise." They drove back to Eugene in silence, the weight of the weekend settling between them. Ezra dropped Javier off at his apartment, their goodbye lingering. A kiss, a hug, a promise to talk soon. But as Ezra drove away, doubt gnawed at him. Could they really make this work? Weeks passed, and the glow of the camping trip faded under the grind of daily life. Ezra threw himself into his design work, sketching logos late into the night, but his thoughts always drifted to Javier. They texted constantly, met for coffee, even stole a few kisses in the back of a dimly lit bar. But Javier's move loomed like a storm cloud, and Ezra felt the distance growing even before it was real. One evening, Javier invited Ezra to his apartment for dinner. The place was a mess of boxes, a reminder of his impending departure. Javier cooked tacos, his hands moving with practiced ease, but his usual chatter was subdued. "You okay?" Ezra asked, leaning against the counter. Javier sighed, setting down a spatula. "I told my sister about us, about me. She was cool, but she said I need to tell Mom and Dad before I move. And I'm terrified, Easy." Ezra crossed the room, pulling Javier into a hug. "You don't have to do it alone. I'm here, okay?" Javier nodded against his shoulder, but the fear in his eyes didn't fade. Over dinner, they talked about everything but the move, movies, music, the way Javier's laugh could light up a room. But as they washed dishes, Javier's voice grew quiet. "What if I'm not ready for this? For us?" Ezra's heart froze, but he kept his voice steady. "Then we slow down. But don't shut me out, Javi. Please." Javier didn't respond, and the silence stretched into the night. They kissed goodbye, but it felt fragile, like something breaking. The next week, Javier's texts grew sporadic. Ezra tried to give him space, but the distance hurt more than he'd expected. He threw himself into a new project, designing a mural for a local community center, but every stroke of his pen felt like a distraction from the ache in his chest. Then, one rainy afternoon, Javier called. "Can we meet? I need to see you." They met at a park, the drizzle soaking through their jackets. Javier looked exhausted, his eyes red-rimmed. "I told my parents," he said, his voice hollow. "It didn't go well. They didn't kick me out or anything. But they don't get it. They think it's a phase." Ezra's heart broke for him. "I'm so sorry, Javi. But you did it. That's huge." Javier shook his head. It doesn't feel huge. Feels like I'm losing everything. And I'm scared I'm gonna lose you too. You're not losing me, Ezra said fiercely, grabbing his hand. I'm right here, but you gotta let me in. Javier's eyes searched his, and for a moment, Ezra thought he'd pull away. But then Javier kissed him, hard and desperate, the rain mixing with the salt of their tears. I don't want to mess this up, Javier whispered. I love you, Easy. I do. The words hit Ezra like sunlight breaking through clouds. I love you too, he said, his voice shaking. They stood there, soaked and shivering, but neither wanted to let go. The weeks before Javier's move were a whirlwind of stolen moments and hard conversations. They spent evenings at Ezra's apartment watching old movies and talking about the future. Javier opened up about his fears, about his family, his identity, the pressure of grad school. Ezra listened, his love growing with every vulnerability Javier shared. But the move couldn't be ignored. On Javier's last night in Eugene, they went back to the forest, to the same spot where it all began. The campfire crackled, the stars brighter than ever. They sat close, their hands intertwined, the weight of tomorrow heavy between them. I don't want to say goodbye, Javier said, his voice thick, but I can't ask you to wait for me. Ezra shook his head. You're not asking. I'm choosing. We'll make it work, calls, visits, whatever it takes. I'm not giving up on us. Javier's eyes shimmered with tears, but he smiled. You're stubborn, you know that? Only about the important stuff, Ezra said, pulling him into a kiss. It was slow, deliberate, a promise sealed under the stars. The next morning, Ezra drove Javier to the airport. The goodbye was quiet, their hands lingering until the last possible second. As Javier disappeared into the terminal, Ezra felt a piece of his heart go with him. But it wasn't the end, just a new chapter. They talked every day, their love growing despite the miles. Javier sent pictures of snowy Colorado peaks. Ezra mailed sketches of the mural he'd finished. When Javier's parents called, tentative but trying to understand, Ezra was the first person he told. 6 months later, Ezra flew to Boulder. Javier met him at the airport, his smile brighter than the mountain sun. They didn't have all the answers, but they had each other. And as they stood together, looking out at the Rockies, Ezra knew that night in the tent had changed everything. Not just between them, but within them. It had taught them to be brave, to love fiercely, to fight for what mattered. Their story wasn't perfect, but it was theirs, and that was enough.